Hey guys, this is Steve, and this is part 2 of my Volcano Eruption tutorial series in Blender. Should be the last part, should just be a two-parter. And in this section we will be doing the smoke and the fluid and the compositing. So some of the funnest stuff in this part should be fun. So let's do it. Starting with the fluid, I think I'm ready for that. Yes, I think I can go ahead and do that now. I'm going to start by adding a fluid domain. So you want to go Shift A and add a cube. This will work as a domain, and scale her up a bit. Alright, check that from all your views. Not bad. Let's scale along the Z a little bit there because we don't need it to be too high. Just make sure it's centered on that nicely. That should do it. Maybe scale up just a little bit bigger. You don't want it to have to be any bigger than it needs to be, because then it's just wasting cash and time when you're baking it. But you also want to make sure it's big enough. So something like that will work well. I'm going to hide my high quality mesh here, and Option H, let me hide that again. Leave my low quality mesh here now for the baking of the fluid. And I'm going to add in another object here for the fluid. So I want it to be around the location of the particle, so I'm just going to go Shift S, cursor to selected on that particle object, so it jumps to the same location as the particle emitter. And now I'll add in another UV sphere for this. So add in a UV sphere, scale it down a little bit smaller than the particle object, something like that, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the bottom section of it, about 50% of it. So we'll just delete, and maybe go 60%, delete all that. Alright, so we have this as our fluid object. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's make this a fluid object. So I'm going to go to my physics here and choose fluid, and this is going to be outflow, I believe. This, no, inflow. We want to choose inflow. This will add fluid to the scene. Alright, so with that chosen as that, and then I'm going to choose my box here and set it as the domain. So go fluid type domain. Alright, so we should, if we rendered right now, we'd have probably a stream of fluid pouring down into here because it's not emitting at all. So what I'm going to do is, well, basically, I don't want a constant stream of fluid. I want it to be on and off here and there, coming and going, like little bubbles of lava bubbling over your water, or your lava eruption, basically. So what I'm going to do for that is keyframe this. And to keyframe, it's very simple. I'm just going to use the I key and hover over these values to insert keyframes and remove keyframes. So I want my first burst of lava to be, oh, let's say around frame 100 would be good. So I'm going to go a frame or two before that, uncheck enabled, and hit I. And we'll add a keyframe there. So basically, right now, the simulation is not enabled for the inflow, and you won't have any fluid coming till this point. Now I'm going to jump a keyframe ahead, click enabled, and hit I again, and that will add a keyframe. So at this point, it turns the simulation on. Now I want it to be on for about 2 or 3 frames, so I'm going to jump along 2 or 3 frames there. I'll go 3, and then I'll hit I on it, and then one more frame, and uncheck it, and hit I again. So if you scrub through, you should see, boom, on for 3 or 4 frames, and then boom, off. That's exactly what we want. Now it will just fall to the ground unless we also give it some velocity. So I'm going to go ahead and add keyframes for the velocity as well, particularly on the Z, because I want it to be shooting up in the sky. So go ahead and hover over these values and hit I. And let's give it a value of, I'm not sure what would work well. Let's see what 4 would do. I think 4 will work well. Hit I, scrub along to the end, and hit I again. Cool. Now I also want to be kind of going with the wind maybe a little bit and splattering over this direction. And this is the, let me see here. If I grab it along the y-axis. This is the y-axis. The positive y, I believe, yes. So I want it to be shooting along the positive y, so that would be the positive y over here. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a, let's give this a 2, 1.5 value, and insert another keyframe to make sure it keeps that. And do the same thing at this point. We'll go 1.5. Very good. So with that little bubble of an eruption there, if I bake my simulation, we should see that come out, and it should splatter over our obstacle here because we already set it up as a fluid obstacle. So let's see what that does. If I grab my fluid sim here, leaving it at a low quality just so we get the simulation working right. The only thing I'm going to change first is the fluid world. This is going to be much larger than 0.5 meters. This is the real world size. Basically the scale of this box, it wants to know right here. So I'm going to say this is about 15 feet. No, 30 feet we'll say. So we'll go 10 meters, which is around 30 feet. Alright, and then for a fluid preset, I'm going to choose honey, because that's going to be the closest to lava, I believe. So we'll go save before we bake. And let's just give it a bake to see how our fluid animation is looking. So it will take a little while, but not too bad with just 65. You can see it up here. Zooming along, and there we have fluid in our scene. So you can see to this point we have no fluid in our scene. That's enabled. We get this blob of fluid coming up and coming down and splattering on the inside of our volcano. So it's not coming up enough. So let's just grab that emitter there and crank the velocity of the Z up. We'll go 7, I think would be good maybe. And make sure it's 7 at the end as well. And make sure you hit I every time, otherwise it won't save your value. And let's try baking that one more time. Let's grab that fluid object there and click bake again. It should just zoom through it again. And this is a little bit of trial and error to get the right look with the fluid. But as long as you're doing it at a low resolution, it doesn't take that much time really. So that's a bit more cool. That's more what I'm looking for. And I think that would be pretty sweet. So last thing I want to change on that though is, let me grab that. I want it to come towards the camera a little bit too. So that would be along the positive X axis. So let's just add those to the keyframe here as well. We'll give it a 1 along the X and do that at the end as well. Give it a 1 along the X and hit I. Very good. So just to make sure, let's grab that fluid, bake it one more time, but I'm thinking I'll be pretty satisfied with this this splatter. And if you wanted to create more lava splatters, basically for a full animation, you would just continue doing what I've done here. That looks pretty sweet. Not too bad. And the way you could do that to speed things up, like I did, is you grab your object there, you go to your dope sheet, and you see those keyframes that we inserted on that fluid emitter. These are the different settings. You could just select all those, duplicate them again, move them along your timeline there. You can see it moving them down here. Jump to those settings and give them different values. So you want to give the first ones here, you want to change to 0. So basically 0 them out, and then hit I. And then you could give them a different value after that point. So actually I want to 0 them out here. I'm sorry. And you want to 0 them out at the first keyframe there. Insert keyframes. And then here you could give them a different value. So maybe this would shoot up a little less high, and maybe we'd go the other direction. So we'd go in the negative Y, and still maybe the positive X. Alright, and then change those settings at this frame as well. So negative Y, something close to what we had before, negative Y, and then positive X. So we can leave it like that. And, whoops, I didn't hit I, so it didn't save my settings. Like I said, you gotta be careful about that. So let me do that again. Hit I this time after I set my settings up. So something like that, and then hit I. And same thing further down, we need to hit I when we set our settings. So something like that is good, and that will save our settings there. And that will shoot another one that direction. So I'll quick bake that, but we should be done with the animating. Now I'll just do some quality settings and add some fluid particles, and then I think we can add the material to our fluid sim after baking. So let's see what that's looking like. We get that blob coming up there, bloomp, and another one coming up that way is bloomp, and that looks pretty sweet. Not too bad. So we just got a few things to change now. This is the time of the simulation, basically how fast it's moving. And we have 200 frames, which will be roughly, let me see, 8 seconds of footage at 24 frames a second. But I do want the simulation to be moving kind of slow, because the slower the fluid looks, the bigger scale it seems. So I'm going to go ahead and give this 8, because it's about 8 seconds, but I'm going to take the speed down to about a 0.8, just to kind of slow down the simulation a little bit, to give it a more large-scale size. Okay, so fluid boundary we can leave at that, but we want to give it 2 subdivisions and a little bit of smoothing. We'll go 0.5 in the smoothing. 2 subdivisions is important, because for the particles you need at least 2 subdivisions there. And I will have it generate a lot of particles, 0.3, and we'll go 2 on the tracer particles there. Alrighty, so that should do it. We should get some sweet results with that, and I think I'm ready to do a high quality bake. I believe my project I did like a 180 or maybe 200 in the bake, but for the sake of the tutorial and time and everything else, I think I'll go 150 and just keep it a little smaller scale. So I'm just going to go 150 for the fluid and bake. And now this might take just a little bit more time to bake. You'll see it come up here. So I'll pause the recording and let that finish. It might be a few minutes, and then I'll jump back with you guys then. Alright, and that smoke simulation finished there, but you still see the low res here unless you switch to viewport display. It's set to preview right now. We want to set that to final, and we'll see our high res fluid there. I'm sorry, did I say smoke earlier? I meant fluid. So let's click the smooth option on that real quick in our toolbar there. And let's see what that looks like now as it goes out. So we have that fluid come up, and it hits, and it looks pretty sweet. You could even go crazier and have it coming over the edge and stuff, so you see more of it pouring down. That always looks nice, but I'm not going to bother rebaking this because it took a while. It took maybe 10 minutes. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to have it come out, it would look better if it came out along the side there. And you can see, because I chose no slip, it just sticks there like lava would, and that looks pretty sweet as well. But yeah, it's not coming out far enough. I'm going to rebake it just because I want it to come out and kind of pour down the edge there, and that is always sweet. So I need to tweak these keyframes. Let's change it along the Y, bring it out to 2. Let's change it along the X to 1.5, maybe even a little bit more than 2. Make sure you hit I on your keyboard, then jump to the last frames there, and bring them up a bit too, 2.2 or something, and 1.5. Cool. And then further on as well, we need larger numbers here, otherwise it won't be hitting the edge. So make those numbers nice and large, something like that. Alright, you don't have to be too accurate unless you're getting really fine details, but that should be a bit better right there. Let's bring that up a little bit. Alrighty, that should be a bit better, maybe even a little bit more, just to make sure it goes over the edge would be good, just because I don't want it to not work this time. Alright, there we go. We'll see what that looks like. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that fluid again, and I think I'm ready to bake it. I think the quality was okay. I think the particles were okay. Just save the project and bake, and it'll be a few seconds. No, a few minutes again, and then I'll be back. Okay, and that bake finished, and we got some splattering. We got some gorgeous, beautiful splattering. It's just a shame it doesn't go on longer, but it looks a lot better now. So there you go. You got some of that splattering effects, and it looks pretty sweet. Cool. Got some sweet splattering going on. So that'll do it for the fluid. We'll just work on the material for that real quick. Then I'll move on to the smoke. So let's do the material for this fluid first and foremost. So I'll switch out of my dope sheet here to my node editor, and we'll give it a new material right there. It's not going to be a diffuse, it's going to be a shader. I believe it's an emission shader. Let me see, yes. I want emission, and an add shader. No, we're just going to plug the emission into the surface, and we're going to go shader volume absorption for the volume there. All right, cool. And let me give that about a strength of 15, and let's just start seeing what we're getting with that. All right, I'm sorry, I was messing up the material a little bit there. Basically, I want the volume absorption and a add shader right there. And just plug the emission into the bottom of the add shader. And I want the emission to be white. And I'll give it a strength of about 10. We'll see what that looks like. Pure white, I think, would be fine. But the volume absorption is going to be a orangish reddish color. And now I want a glass material, actually. So I'm just going to use the shader glass for that of the surface. And I'm just going to give it an IOR value of about 0.22. Something a little lower than 0.13, which is water for lava. And I'll give this kind of an orangish color as well. Alright, so let's see what this is looking like if I give her a render. Alright, so you can kind of see where we're getting the lava coming in there. The density is too high on the volume absorption. Let's take that down to about 4. And there you can see we get some of the white coming in from the emission shader. And that's looking pretty nice. So you can kind of tweak the color of the glass a little bit there, get something you like, and then the color of the volume absorption as well, and you get some pretty sweet looking fluid. Maybe crank the strength up a little bit more on the emission shader, and bring that brighter up a little bit. I think it looks pretty nice. It looks a little bit like honey. Might just want a little bit more white in it, so you just take the density down a little bit to about 0.3, and let me see what a higher IOR value might look like. What about 1.5? The differences are slight and subtle, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. But I think that's pretty sweet looking. And let's go towards the end where it splatters there, and you can see it looks very lava-ish by the volume absorption, giving it the brighter colors in the center then, and the darker colors towards the end. So that's going to do it for the lava material. Excellent, and that's another simulation done and dusted for now. So we can go ahead and just hide that so it's not in our way. Let's hide the particles as well, and let's do our third and final simulation, which is going to be the smoke, the most cool part, debatable in this tutorial. The smoke, it's really sweet. So I'm going to make just a nice big domain here, because what I'm going to be using is an adaptive domain, so the size doesn't matter so much because it will automatically be making a smaller domain, only necessary for the amount of smoke you have. Alright, and I'm going to need an obstacle here for emitting that smoke. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to duplicate the one I have for the fluid here. So just go Shift D. I'll scale this one up a bit though now, and remove the fluid from it, and let's also clear the keyframes from it. So I'll switch to dope sheet here, and with this selected, this is sphere 2. You can delete all the keyframes on sphere 2. There we go. Hit X and delete those keyframes. Make sure you keep the ones on sphere 1. Don't want to mess that up in case you need it. But now that we have this will be a fluid or smoke simulation. So this will be smoke. Change it to smoke and change it to flow. Alright, and now grab our large domain there that we just created, and this is going to be smoke as well, but this will be the domain, just like we had with the fluid. This is going to be for the smoke. Alright, so we're going to choose smoke adaptive domain right there, and let's see what we want to change. I think the smoke is going to be rising too fast. The time scale needs to be adjusted because we have about 8 seconds here. We'll make this about 8, just like we did with the fluid. And let's just see what it's looking like so we can kind of get an idea of what we're going for. So the smoke's just raising up really fast. Getting some of that wind coming in there, which is nice, but it's moving in general too fast. So basically taking the density to a lower number will slow down the smoke. So it's already 0.001, but let's add another 0 to that. And we get a little bit slower moving smoke, which is a little bit better. Now let's take the temperature difference, and lowering this value will also give you slower rising smoke. So I'm going to go 0.01, And we'll see what that looks like. There we go. Now we're getting some slow rising smoke, even too slow in my opinion now. So we'll take that up to about 0.06. Get it rising somewhat, but just nice and slow and nothing like shooting up into the air. So 0.4 might be the best. And that should work already. So one other thing that is good for the smoke is adding a little bit of turbulence. And that would be with a force field. So we're going to add a force field turbulence to it. But you might have an issue because your emitter will then get the turbulence, and we don't want it to the particles if you ever need to bake that again. So what you want to do if you add another force field into it is you could either do it on separate layers, because force fields will only affect objects and simulations on that layer, or you could do what I'm going to do here and grab my particles there and just head to Option H, unhide them. Go to the particle settings here and just turn off any sort of influence that it would have with turbulence. So turn that down to 0, and now the turbulence will not affect that force field. I mean that particle system. Alright, so we can hide those particles, and I can hide the fluid sim again. Alright, and I can hide that high quality mesh as well. So let's see what this is looking like now. Smoke's coming up nice and slow. You're getting a little bit of turbulence in there, and it's kind of blowing into the wall right away. Not super great. Let's move our domain over there a little bit though, so it kind of follows the stream of the smoke. Alright, that's kind of cool. Not too bad. It's looking a little bit better to me. Let's go to our domain settings now though and change just a few of these things. I think the wind. Whoa, the scale is off here. I'm sorry. This is the speed of the simulation, not the frames. I was getting confused. This is basically the speed of the simulation. So we can go a little bit slower. We'll go 0.8 with that. And now we can change the speed of the rising a little bit. So I kind of messed that setting up a little bit. I was having a brain freeze and thought it was the same as the other one, but it's not. No big deal. Just keep it slightly slower than 1. And it looks kind of sweet. Maybe 0.8 would be better. Alright. So now we have some other settings here. Smoke group, smoke cache. Smoke cache is important. Let's change that to end after 200 frames so it fits our simulation time here. And smoke high resolution. So I think this is it. We don't need our smoke to dissolve because we don't really need it to dissolve. I might give some more strength to this turbulence. Let's see what that looks like if I give it a little bit more strength and maybe a little bit more size. We can see what kind of changes we get to the simulation. Alright, maybe a little less strength and a little more size would be cool. It's looking pretty basic, but that's just because it's not baked at a high resolution. It's just very low quality. Alrighty. Let's try to strength up a little bit and see what we get, just so we can kind of see it happen a little bit more. What it's doing. Alrighty. Alright, so we're getting some variation there. I think the size might be a little bit too large. Alright, so we're getting some coolness coming. Doesn't look terrible. Yeah, that looks a little bit bad, but let's just see what it looks like. Alright, let's just turn the strength down a little bit and call it good. Should be good. Should be good. Okay, so let's let me just see right there. Alright, the simulation strength is a little too strong. Let's keep it a little bit smaller scale. There we go. That's better. Don't want to overdo the strength of the turbulence. Cool. Okay, that's going more with the wind now and kind of going in the right direction, and I'm pretty happy with that. So, now we're going to just set the last few things here, and this is going to be smoke high resolution. You want to check that. We'll leave that at 2 divisions. Don't want to go too high because it will take a long time to render then. We'll leave the noise method at 2 as well. The divisions in general, I'm going to take this to 128. So that's pretty high quality, but not crazy high quality. So that will be good for the tutorial. Might take 10 minutes to bake, I'm guessing, but should be good. Should be good, and I'll go with that. So 128 and 2 on your high resolution. Full sample, leave it at that, and let's bake it. let's bake it, and then we'll see what we get after it finishes. Alright, so the smoke simulation finished there, and it's not bad, but it's a little bit small, I thought. Not quite big enough, so I did scale up my emitter here, and I may try baking that again. But for now, I'm going to leave it so I can set up the materials and whatnot. But it's just something I might do if it's not looking super great when I'm rendering it. So I scaled up the emitter just a little bit, though. You can just scale it up. You might want to do it along the Shift Z, so it doesn't scale it up and down, but just on the X and Y. So just scale it up as big as you can to have it just fitting in that that hole that we created, and then make sure it's out of sight as well. Alright, so let's set up that material, though, for this smoke. One thing before we get into the materials is you want to go to your render settings here. Go to volume, I think it is, or performance. Let me see here. I'm looking for volume sampling, no, light pass. And give it a 1 under volume, and this will give it some scattering inside the volume. So to give that a 1, and it will help with the scattering. Okay, so let's render this smoke out. To do this in cycles currently, this is 2.74. We are going to create a new material. We'll delete the diffuse on it. We have our domain selected there. And I'm going to add in a shader, add shader. Now my viewport is running kind of jumpy with this high-res smoke sim here. So what you can do, as a little tip to get some better frame rate, is change this to smoke. Just uncheck the show high-resolution smoke there. And it's just that way it will run faster in your viewport. Alright, so with the add shader here, we'll put it into the volume, because we're rendering volume here. You gotta remember that. Then we're gonna go Shift A, and we're going to add in a shader volume absorption, plug that in the bottom, and Shift A volume scatter, plug that in the top. Alright, now to control the density of these values, we're going to add in a input attribute node, and we're going to name this caps and all, capital D E N S I T Y, density, D E N S I T Y. And we're going to take the factor of that as the density. So plug that into the density of both those values. And now to kind of control the density, we're going to add in a converter math node. We're going to switch that to multiply. And we're also going to add in a color brightness contrast. Alright, so plug that into both of them. And these are going to be the two options that we have for kind of controlling the way the smoke looks. So if I go rendered viewport, we don't see anything with the smoke currently. Let me check my settings here. Why aren't I? I should be seeing some smoke. So something's a little messed up. Alright, no capital D, I'm sorry. No capital D. There we go. And you see the smoke showing up there. So the multiply, I'm going to give a value of about 5. And that will make it much more dense there, as you can see. Which gives it a better look. And then the contrast, I'm going to give, let me see, something small, because you don't want it to be taking away too much smoke. But I'm thinking like a 2 or 1.8 would be good for that. Something like that looks pretty sweet. And the last thing to do is what I did to kind of adjust the color of the smoke. Well, first of all, what I did is I took the smoke emitter here, basically the emitter for the smoke, yeah, and give this just a basic emission material. So it's emitting light, give it a little bit of a reddish color, something like that. Give it like a 15, so it's emitting a lot of light onto that smoke. So now when you go rendered view, you see some of that light coming up on that smoke that would be coming from the lava down in there. So that definitely helps colorize your smoke a bit and give it that cool look. 15 might just be a little strong, maybe make it 12 or something like that. Make the color all the way bright. Alrighty. So that definitely helps with the smoke. Now let me select my smoke material here again and maybe take the contrast down a little bit because it's still chopping away too much of the smoke there. You can see if the contrast is a small number, you have a little bit more smoke in the scene. but it also seems to add more density if you give more contrast, so you gotta find a happy value. And I think 1.2 is fairly decent. So that's not looking too bad with the smoke now, though. And if I unhide my particles and my my fluid, let me just hide the low quality mesh there, and give that a rendered look, we have this. So things are getting real. Things are starting to look pretty sweet. Jump back a little bit, you can see the fluid in mid-air. I still think the fluid might be a little bit dark colored though, so let me tweak that material here. Maybe just brighten up these colors, give them a little bit more white. There we go. Make them look a little bit hotter. Cool. Maybe a little less emission then. So there you go. You got the smoke, you have the fluid. Things are coming together. Like I said, I just want to bake that smoke at a higher res, and then I think I'll start rendering. I believe I should be able to do that then. Let me just see what this looks like if I get a nice screenshot in there. Something like that. Doesn't look too bad. Needs a little bit of work, but the particles aren't really showing up yet either, so you can't judge it yet. And a few things that I want to quick change. Lower the camera down a bit. Rotate her up again, just to give it a little bit of a bigger scale look. Alright, something like that's cool. Grab her down a little bit more. Alright, and let's give it some depth of field. So I'm going to take the focus point, and I'll make it the smoke domain. So that's cube 1. You can see down here the title. So I'm going to give the focus to be cube 1. There we go. And choose, no, you don't have to choose limits, I'm sorry. And then just give it a f-stop value of about, let's make it 1.6. So that gives us some depth of field now. When I go rendered, you'll have some depth of field blurring out the closer areas, which will make it look more realistic. And that's looking a little bit better. So everything's coming together, not looking too bad. These particles are a little slim though. So I might want to add more particles and rebake this. So let's free bake that. Change that to 1500 particles, just so we got a whole bunch of those, because they look cool. We can bake those again. And then, like I said, I'm going to scale up my smoke emission there, like I did already. Is this a smoke emission here? Yes, this one's with the smoke. If I go here, I can see yes. And I'll scale that up just a little bit more. So we got some nice big smoke clouds coming out of there. Nice. And I'm just going to rebake both of these now. It'll take me about 10 minutes or so to do that. First, starting with the particles. Let me grab the particle emitter there. It's right there. So I'm going to bake both of these like I said. And then I'll be right back with you guys when it's all baked and cooked and ready to come out of the oven. Alright, so smoke simulation finished. Particle simulation was baked. And it doesn't look too bad. The smoke might have a little bit too much turbulence on it still. And it's looking a little bit straight because of that, but it's not terrible. And because it has taken a while to bake, I'm not going to rebake it if I don't have to. So what I'm going to do though is click Show High Resolution Smoke. Make sure everything is selected, and I think I can do a render. I believe I should be able to just go ahead and do a render, and we should be able to add some compositing effects and finish up this this bad boy now. It's been a little bit of time baking lately. So that's the one thing you'll have to beware, is that when you do this tutorial, you'll be doing a lot of baking. Hope you're a good cook. So I'm going to change my resolution just to 1280, but 720. Just 720p HD. And I'm going to change the render to 50 because I don't have all day to render. So we'll do that. Pick a nice frame to render. And let's go F12 to render. And this will take a minute, but I'll pause the recording. The smoke will take a little bit longer than normal to render. And then I'll jump back with you guys once it is rendered. Alright, and there's our first low quality render. Not terrible. The environment might be a little dark, so you can always lift up the brightness of that environment a little bit in the world node settings here, and bring up the value a little bit too. But I'm not going to re-render it yet because I'm going to do the compositing first. So let's get the compositing done on our volcano here. So just switch to compositing there, click use nodes and backdrop, and then if you go Control Shift and select your render layer, you see it in the background there. It doesn't look too bad, but it will definitely look a lot better after the compositing is applied to it. So for the compositing, first off, let's do a little mist. So for the mist, I'm going to do a let me see here, vector map value, and we're going to take the Z from the render layer and place it to the value, and then Control Shift click that. Let's choose use minimum, maximum, and let's change the size to be 0.001. So we get a very dark looking image. Yes. So now I need to take the minimum, I believe it is. No, I want to change the maximum so it matches, so that white comes down to matching that of the domain. So this is going to take a little bit of tweaking, but basically the map value is taking effect to the domain, and that's what's giving us that box shape there. That square edge is the domain of the smoke, and all I need to do is make it match the colors by changing this. So I'm going to go 0.2, maybe make that a little bit brighter. Yep, 0.5. You can see once I hit about 16, it matches there, and you don't have that issue. Sweet. So and then we can change the offset a little bit here to give ourselves some different effects to the mist here. But and then you can see actually we need to tweak. If you Option V, you can zoom in, and if you V, you can zoom out. You can see we need to tweak this a little bit more. Let's go 15, and then it matches better. There we go. So let's throw a let me see here, converter math node in here, and switch it to multiply. And this will give us some control over the mist here. You can also see now that I'm multiplying it, you can see this in brighter view, and it's still not quite accurate with the maximum here. If we go 14, it looks like it's perfect. So that's pretty close now. And I'm just going to use the basic color mix node and plug it into our image, and then this is going to be the factor to mixing in some of a light orange mist to the scene. You can see it gives us some nice depth when you do that, and it definitely improves the scene a lot. So find a middle ground there, something like that. Looks good with the mist, and then applied to it, it's just a little too strong, but it's what we're looking for. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then just duplicate this, whoops, not that node, sorry. Duplicate this mix node with Shift D, plug the original into the bottom, and this will basically be toning down the amount. 1 would be 100% the bottom image, which is the original image, and 0.8 would be a little less, and you can just kind of tweak it to get some mist, but not a whole bunch, and you can see some of the mist coming through now, and that looks pretty good. So let's get into the glows. The glows is the coolest part, and I'm going to do it mostly with the glare node. So we're going to add in a filter glare, pop that in there, and connect the viewer node to it with Control Shift. Now right now it's set to streaks. We want it to be fog glow, and this is going to be the first initial tight glow. So small glow, I'm going to turn it down to 6, and I'm going to turn the mix up to 1 so I can see what is being glowed right now. And you can see that it's these highlights that are being selected because of the threshold being at 1. I'm going to take the threshold down, and it will select more highlights and more highlights as I go. I really want this to be some of the sparks in there, so go till you see some of the sparks in there, and then it will be good. So maybe 0.08, and that looks pretty sweet. You can see some of the sparks coming in there then. 0.07 even, maybe. Something like that. Bringing in a little bit more, 0.06, and then we can turn the mix back to 0. Actually, we might want to leave just a little bit of the mix up there to give it a little bit of a blown out look. Maybe about a 0.1. And that looks pretty sweet. You can see before and after, the glow definitely adds a lot to it. Alright, so now I'm going to duplicate this node. Same settings, but I'm going to turn the threshold down just a little bit more, maybe 0.4, and then I'm going to turn the glow all the way up to 9. So now you can see, boom, that adds that wider glow to it. But this one, I want the mix to be a little less, so I'm going to go minus 0.3 or so to turn that amount of glow down just a little bit. Alright, so now you can see before the glows and after the glows. It's looking quite a bit spiffier. Not bad. And then the final glow is going to be a wide glow across the whole image. And the way I'm going to do that is a color ramp. So I'm going to add a converter color ramp. Or no, I'm sorry. RGB curves. All right. So pop the glare into that image there. Let's go to that with Control Shift. We want this to be a very dark image, so we're getting just the highlights again. Something like that. Now I'm going to blur this, so filter blur. Go fast Gaussian, relative along the Y, and we'll just go like 15 by 15. So we get a nice wide glow like that. Now I'm going to just take that and go color mix, add, change it to add, and plug this in the bottom. And then if we view that, you can see we get that huge wide glow across the whole image. I'm going to blur it out even more. I'm going to go 20 by 20. And then obviously turn the amount down, like you probably expected, to something much smaller than what we had. 0.08. Still too strong. 0.03 maybe. Something low. Alright, you can blur it out even more. 25, 25 to expand that out a little bit more. Cool. So with all the glows applied, we're getting pretty nice looking results. Now it's about time for a little bit of color correction. So we can drop in a color balance right there and kind of tweak the color. So I want the whole image to be a little bit darker now. So I'm going to take it down a few notches. Let's just darken that and then view it through there so we can see what we're getting. Alright, it's not too bad. I think I'm also going to turn the amount of mist up a little bit. So moving around here with my middle mouse wheel, just if you guys didn't know already. I'm going to take the mist factor, where do we have it? Right here. And give it a little bit more mist. There we go. That's good. Alright. Now adjust the colors. Okay. One thing I'm noticing, just making a few adjustments as we go to the materials here, because I can tell in the compositor now, the strength of this is a little bit too high still. I'm going to turn that down to an 8. And I think the strength of the particles isn't quite high enough. So I'm going to select the particles here, go Node Editor, and let's give that a strength of like 20. So these particles are very bright. Alright, cool. So we have that. Now back to the color balancing. Maybe adjust the mids a little bit here. Brighten it up just a little bit. Take the darks down a little bit. Maybe give the shadows a little bit of a red look. Alright, maybe give the mids a little bit of a blue. And then these a little bit of red, just to kind of get some contrast in there. And that's not looking too bad. Alright, like I said, this will be a little bit less blown out once this is re-rendered. So keep that in mind. Let's add a little bit of lens distortion. So just a distort, lens distortion, and put a little bit of dispersion in that scene there. See what that's looking like. Alright, a little bit goes a long way though, so just like a 0.5. Alright, cool. And you could add a vignette on top of that as well, but I don't think it's necessary. So I think I'm ready to render out a scene, and we'll see what this is looking like. You can always come back and tweak the glows. I think this first glow here should be a little bit brighter actually. Not really seeing it. Let me see what that looks like with the whole image. Boom. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Change this down one. Keep it up one. Not bad. But once these sparks are showing up better too, it will look pretty sweet. So alright, let's give this another render. I might change the position of my camera a little bit here too. Just as I'm doing these things real quick, grab the camera, just pull it out a little bit. Just to get a little larger scale look of the scene. Sweet. Alright, let's save it. I did brighten up my background a little bit there so I could see a little bit better. And I think I'm ready to give it a render. So I'll quick crank the samples up to 100 just so it's a little bit cleaner. And this should be our final render then. Like I said, you can go ahead and tweak all these like I've shown you along the way. to get the results exactly how you want, but obviously it's too time consuming to do too much of that in a tutorial, and I don't want to bore you guys. So I'm going to let this render out, and then I'll show you guys the final results and any tweaks that might be in order, but then we'll be finished. Alright guys, and there's our volcano eruption. A little too bright in the center there, so I might bring my window up here, go node editor, 3D view, and take the emission strengths down a little bit more on that that smoke emitter there. Let me see if I can't find that. Is this the one? No, this is the particle one. But like I said, that's the same option I always changed it before. I took it down to 8, maybe take it down to 5. But like I said, I can tweak this a lot. But you get the idea of how it's all created now. It looks pretty sweet, and you could always take it to the next step by adding more tender loving care to your scene. So that is it, though. I want to add a little bit more mist, possibly. Let me see. Yeah, I'm kind of losing the amount of mist here. So maybe pull in some more mist there by offsetting it a little bit. Let's see what we're getting here. I want to offset this a bit. Pull in some more mist. Yeah, something like that looks kind of sweet then. Just because I changed my focal length, I need to do that. But yeah, let's give it a full mist for now. We'll see what that looks like. Not bad. Not too bad. So there's our volcano, guys. Finished, done, and dusted. And I hope you guys learned some things along this 2-part tutorial series. Had some fun. Played with the smoke sim, the fluid sim, particles, landscapes, textures, everything all in this tutorial. So I hope you guys learned something out of all that. Had some fun and enjoyed the entire thing. So that's it from me. This is Steve signing out, and I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. So bye-bye.